Episode 190, Climate Change and the USDA. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 21st of October 2019. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. This week we're focusing on the front line with a piece from Politico in the US entitled, "I'm standing right here in the middle of climate change. How USDA is failing farmers." Quote, Rockport, Missouri. Rick Oswald is standing on the doorstep of the white farmhouse he grew up in, but almost nothing is as it should be. To his right, 4 steel grain bins, usually shiny and straight, lay mangled and ripped open, spilling now rotten corn into piles like sand dunes. The once manicured lawn has been overtaken by waist-tall cattails, their seeds carried in by floodwaters that consumed this house, this farm, and everything around it last spring. End quote. Weather events have been hitting the US farm sector as much as the Australian, South African and, well, everywhere. The thing with the US and Australia is the lunacy of the right of centre parties in both cases, governments, and their religious attachment to climate change denial. This has knock-on effects throughout the agricultural sectors of both countries. In the EU, climate change is accepted as a thing that needs reaction. The funding rounds they use, and I'm no expert on these, but what I can work out from observation and reading is the EU Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP, was designed to ensure famine never returned to Europe after the experiences of the first half of the 20th century. More of this CAP funding is being directed towards environmental and biodiversity measures each time there's a new round of funding. In the US, the situation is somewhat more complicated. The USDA is responsible for promoting farming methods, assisting in the sale of agricultural production, and a few other things. According to the article, the department has been banned from even using the climate word in any of its publications, and it goes deeper. Quote, but the Agriculture Department is doing little to help farmers adapt to what experts predict is the new norm. Increasingly extreme weather across much of the US. The department, which has a hand in just about every aspect of the industry, from doling out loans to subsidising crop insurance, spends just 0.3% of its $144 billion budget helping farmers adapt to climate change. Whether it's identifying the unique risks each region faces or helping producers rethink their practices so they're better able to withstand extreme rain and periods of drought. End quote. So what's to be done? The myth of farmers as small C conservatives is based upon some level of truth. Equally, though, they are in business. The unstoppable flow of climate data and lived experience hitting up against the immovable object that is family tradition inevitably leads to some change. There are organisations out there. NCAT-ATRA is a great example. I'm not sure, but they may well be part of the 0.3% of the USDA spends on adaptation. And even if it is, the organisation is worth its weight in gold. The ATRA part stands for Appropriate Technology Transfer for Rural Areas, or something close to that. And it doesn't matter because they always use the tagline, Sustainable Agriculture. And it's under the umbrella of NCAT, which is the National Centre for Appropriate Technology. I've been a fan of this site for over a decade and a half. All their material used to be free, and a fair bit still is, but paywalls were added after the crash of 07-08, and don't seem to be coming down anytime soon. They provide no-till info, market research tools, and more than I can list here. Their podcast is one I recommend and listen to. Now, pasture management of boar goat breeders in Arkansas may not be directly applicable to northwest Tasmania, but I always find some nugget in each episode. Now, there are also things called climate hubs in the US, which are part of the USDA, but not many farmers have heard of them. They keep a low profile in the current political situation. Funding can be cut at a moment's notice. Even those farmers who know about these don't know much about the adaptation tools for decision-making that they've developed. The situation to those on the front line is perplexing. Quote, Asked if his local USDA office ever talks about climate change adaptation, Oswald, the farmer from the first quote, laughed. No. The logic of such silence makes little sense to farmers like Oswald. Most believe that the climate is changing, though only a small share believe it's primarily driven by human activities. But the department doesn't have to dive into the debate about what's causing climate change to help farmers prepare and adapt. I'm standing right here in the middle of climate change right now, Oswald said, end quote. And this is the sad reality. The front line is being let down by the very people supposed to be helping it. As any listeners know, I'm all for introducing regenerative measures to increase soil carbon, and this is being explored in the US too. Quote, environmentalists and a growing portion of the industry think American agriculture could be shifted from a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions to instead be a massive carbon sink, or a giant sponge pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and into millions of acres of soil, something that could actually help combat climate change. And of course, this is me now. As we all know, back to the quote, there are several relatively simple changes farmers could make to become more resilient, which also have the benefit of drawing down carbon. Producers, for example, can reduce or eliminate tillage, which not only prevents soil carbon from being released into the atmosphere, but also helps improve how soil holds up to too much or too little moisture. They can add what's known as cover crops to their crop rotation, a practice that helps better soil structure and has the added benefit of sequestering even more carbon into the soil, making it more resilient to extreme weather. End quote. This is the madness I have trouble with. A few changes would lead to better soils better able to withstand weather events, produce healthier food, clean waterways, lower costs of production, and well, you get the picture. But these things are being ignored for the sake of political positions. It is, I think, a matter of mobilisation of both people and ideas to overcome this. And I certainly hope this podcast is assisting to reach the 100th monkey I spoke about in episode 189. All we can do is to continue to push our arguments. Let people know there is another way, to grow food by example and to be the change we want to see. And on that note, I'll draw this episode to a conclusion. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. We are, my co-host and I, Rich Bowden, in the process of writing Regen Earth's second season of podcasts, and I'll let you know when they're out there roaming free on the interwebs. In the meantime, you might want to listen to our short season 1 and subscribe so you're ready when season 2 drops. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.